Hello, thanks for joining me for our next session. Today we're going to be looking at Genesis 1 again. We're going to start with verse 5. Sorry, we're going to start with verse 6. So get your Bible handy and we'll continue where we left off last time. And God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters to separate water from water." And so God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so. God called the expanse sky. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. Let's pause there for a second. We'll talk about the second day of creation. The second day speaks a lot about water and speaks about waters that are separated and water above, water below. What are we talking about here? Obviously, if we think about what's happening, God is creating an atmosphere. God is creating an environment where there is still parts of the earth are covered by water. Actually, we'll get to that. And there's water above the water that's on the ground. Now, we go, well, that's kind of strange. And of course, there's many different theories about what exactly that means. But if we look at our atmosphere has moisture in it. Moisture is what gives us right now rain. It gives us weather. Pressure systems, of course, environments. They're all created, through moisture content and through, of course, the changing moisture content, which, of course, brings us seasons, brings us rainfall, snowfall, all of that stuff. I'm not saying that was the case at the beginning of creation, but I'm saying that we have a huge amount of water that is hovering above the water that is on the ground in our earth. Now, what an unusual thing. That somebody writing thousands of years ago would know that there is such a thing as water above. And of course, most of us going through the Bible don't question it. Some do, some don't. Some think, okay, well, that's very strange. But here is God revealing that very quickly, as soon as we have a planet, as soon as we have light, the very, very next fundamental component of this environment that God is creating is water. And we, of course, can say, yeah, that's definitely complemented by science, which tells us that water is probably one of the most important components of life. As far as we know, carbon-based life, which is the only life that is present here on Earth, needs water to survive, needs water to keep thriving, to keep living, reproducing, feeding, etc., 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 etc. So we ourselves are full of it. We are very much full of water, and God, on the very second day of creation, creates not only he doesn't just leave water covering the surface of the planet, but he creates a space which also contains water for the creatures creatures that he's about to create to live in. We very much are dependent on this watery environment. I should probably mention that there are some creationists that mention that the atmosphere that was created initially was very, very different from the one that we have currently. And scientists, of course, will talk about that too. And then here we're talking about thousands of years ago. And of course, scientists would be speaking in terms of millions or billions of years. We're not going to get into that right now, but both would say that the environment on Earth, the ancient environment, was a lot more humid, a lot warmer, and creationists, of course, have some pretty interesting ideas of speaking of something like a canopy. I just almost think of a roof on top of a glass house, a hot house, like a hot house where you would grow tomatoes, for example, has a glass ceiling that lets a sun come in and keeps humidity and warmth inside, and also provides a lot of sun, a lot of light to accommodate growth. So there is a theory that there was a watery canopy, not solid but liquid, possibly spinning at a velocity that could actually keep it suspended above ground, and provided a form of a hothouse ceiling for the planet Earth that allowed temperatures to be warmer, a lot less fluctuation in temperature, so the seasons would have been a lot milder. Basically, a warm, humid, tropical climate that did not fluctuate a whole lot. Perhaps there was fluctuations during the day from daytime to nighttime as the sun set, but not so much in the way of seasons. So I'm not going to get into all the details, but I've heard these theories. They're very interesting, and they also kind of add to the whole idea of separating water from water. For me right now, just thinking about the amounts of humidity and moisture we have in the air is enough. But yeah, so here we go. The second component of creation, water. Also one of the main components of life here on this planet. So let's keep going. Verse 9 says, "And God said, let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear. And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day." Okay, so this section, the third day, speaks about God delineating, or basically setting the boundaries of the continents, as you will. Of course, science now says that if we were to level level all the mountains and fill in all the valleys so that all the highs would come down and all the lows would come up. The surface of the planet would be covered with vast amounts of water. I'll find out exactly how much and probably put it in here, but something like a kilometer or 2 kilometers of water, some incredible amount of water that would be covering the entire surface of the planet. And so God is creating all of a sudden trenches. God is creating mountains, elevated areas, low areas where the oceans are and seas, higher areas where we have our continents, where the shape of the world that we live on is defined. So let's see. God saw that it was good. I mean, God basically says that there will be a variety of environments for life here on Earth. Environments that are mostly water and environments that are mostly dry. And that is according to his plan. And then God said, let the land produce vegetation. Okay, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. Okay, so here we see God bringing forth first organisms. The very first organisms are trees, plants, vegetables, grasses, mosses, mushrooms, lichens, whatever you want to define as a plant, God brings forth. There is no process of evolution that's described in this at this time. God does not create proteins and somehow over time through naturalistic happenings and circumstances and coincidences and chances. These somehow don't bind and become more complex over time. No, nothing is left to chance. Here we see a designer with specific intent creating living, fully functional organisms that have specific functions already built in, dictated by God Himself. So seed-bearing plants and trees. So the whole idea of reproduction is actually built in. Okay, so the whole idea from seeds producing plants, producing flowers, producing pollen, cross-pollinating with other plants, and so on, then creating, once again, fruit, which bears seed, which falls to the ground, which creates more plants, and the cycle of life for vegetation begins and is designed. And of course, the interesting part, which of course strikes directly against the whole notion of evolution, is, and I'm not anti-evolutionist. So let's just look at this part and figure out what it says. So we were reading in verse 11. At the end, it says that bear fruit with seed in it according to their various kinds. Okay. Why is that so important? The whole idea is that if God creates an orange and God creates an apple, we have a fruit designed to be a very specific size and shape and flavor and color, and it grows in a certain environment. And we have another fruit that is different size and shape and taste and texture and nutrient content, and it's designed to grow in a specific environment. the two fruit come from two different trees with two different flowers that can only pollinate and reproduce within its own species, right? So we can possibly mix different citrus fruit. I think they have done that with lemons, limes, oranges, grapefruits, those. And then of course you have apples, and we know you go to the store now and there's 12 different varieties of apples, and it's possible that pears can possibly be crossbred with apples. I'm not sure about that, but probably different varieties of apples can. But you cannot take an orange and you cannot take an apple and create something that is half of apple and half of orange mushed together to produce something that is a little bit of both, a little bit of that tastes like both, and who knows what the skin would be like, who knows what it would be a mess. And then you take that mess that you've created and you bring in a banana and you mush them together, so you have a half apple, half orange thing, and then you have a banana, and you cross them together and you get something a little bit different. And then what else? Maybe mix that with a squash and a potato and a carrot, and in the end you can mix it with a frog, a chimp, and a chihuahua. And I'm exaggerating now, of course, but the whole idea is that each one is designed, that each one is not meant to be crossbred or into something that defies and deletes the initial design. God put limitations on what can breed with what, and each one after its kind, okay, because the design is complete. The designer was perfect. His design was perfect, okay? And so the product that we get is something that has a specific function. It does not need to change, okay? It is set for a specific role, and there is no need. In fact, it would be counterproductive, because, as I said, if you started all of a sudden breeding one with another, completely different, and then you started crossing not only species, but you got into frog, fish, animals, and who knows what else, eventually you would wind up with a form of life that would probably look more like, I can't even say, a bowl of porridge that, it doesn't have any function, doesn't have any taste, and I have no idea. But the initial designs that were built into these would become completely useless, and a form like this would not serve any function, would probably not be able to stay alive, would probably, definitely, it would not serve the original role that was given to it by God. It's good that there are boundaries out there. It's good that when we see outside and we see that there is a pine tree that I'm looking out there right now, and that there is grass, and I don't have to worry that my pine tree and my grass will cross-pollinate, and all of a sudden on my lawn next year I will have these little pine trees growing everywhere, right? Or that eventually I'll have a blade of grass that is in 40 years that's 50 feet tall, and those are good things. Those are good things. There is intent. There is a deliberate desire for God to keep His creation as it has been from the beginning till the end of time. That was the original intent. That's not necessarily the case right now, but we're getting there. So let's keep going. Verse 12, the land produced vegetation, plants bearing according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. So the question, of course, that a lot of people say, well, wait a minute. What? We have not gotten to the part where there is a sun out there. We have a planet. We have land and water. We have humidity in the air. We have an atmosphere. We might even have, like I said, possibly this prehistoric canopy that kept the environment stable and humid and warm. But there is no sun. Why is that? Why is that such a big problem for others? Well, they say, well, we have plants. Okay. Plants need water. Plants need soil, ground. Plants need light. You put a piece of plywood on your lawn for a week, and what are you going to find a week later? You're going to lift that piece of plywood and you're going to find a square or a rectangle of yellow, brown, dead grass. Plants need light. Okay, plants produce food in a process that takes water and nutrients and light and creates food for the plant to survive on. Where's the light coming from at this time? So God. And it's kind of an unusual answer because God, how is he doing this? And I would say that right now, we see the order of importance to God of what needs to be created first. And so God creates light, God creates a planet, God creates water and plants, the environment for life on Earth is first and foremost. Okay. And so we will be getting into day 4. I'm not sure if we're going to do that today, but you know how we spoke about Earth as this little blue marble, little blue dot that is suspended in space, part of this little solar system with all the planets going around the sun, part of a massive Milky Way galaxy, part of a huge, massive cluster of galaxies. And then somewhere that cluster is fitted into a universe that is billions of light years from end to end. It's crazy. It's crazy. But what we're finding out from the Bible in these very first passages, that little blue marble, that little blue dot hanging in space, so vast, so huge, we cannot even comprehend it very well. We find out that this little place takes precedent over everything else in space. It takes precedent over the sun, over the planets, over the solar system, and over the galaxy and the rest of the universe. That is the focal point of creation. God is creating an environment This environment, he puts all of his work, all of his design, all of his purpose into. We can wonder now about life on Mars and life on other planets and other solar systems, whether it's in this galaxy or other galaxy. But God tells us that at the start of creation, all my focus was to create the right environment on this little planet, not Mars, not somewhere else where we can dream about aliens and visitors and whatnot. No, God says here. Right here, where you are right now, is where all of his focus and all of his work was. With regards to this universe, with regards to this space time continuum that you are in right now with me, God put all of his work into. There is no other planet, there is no other solar system, there is no other life environment where God focused first. This is it. This is the center where he started. Isn't that mind blowing? Now, when you think about God and you think about the power and the incredible intellect, when you think about how much we still don't know about our very own environment, whether we pick up a microscope and look at viruses or bacteria or tiny little animals, molds, whatever it is that we're looking at, microbes, or whether we start looking at the massive environment. Nowadays, there's a lot of talk about global warming and pollution and all of those things. How much of it do we understand? How much of it we still don't understand? We look at animals. They're still finding animals, even though many species have died, they're still finding new species out there in jungles, in deep forests somewhere that nobody has ever seen or cataloged or named yet. How much do we know and how much do we not know? What about the moon? What about other planets? We've sent some probes to the moon. We've had people on the moon. We've had probes on Mars, but that's about it. And people are hoping to find life. People are hoping desperately to figure out that somewhere out there is somebody else besides us, that we are not alone. And I'm here to tell you right now that we are not alone. We are not alone. The one who made this planet focused completely on it. In fact, everything else made outside of this planet takes a back seat, so far back. It's just a background. It's just a background. You and I and the environment we live in was the very, very, very first thing that God focused on. We are the center of the universe, this planet. It's not the sun, it's not the galaxy, it's not some other place where we can, oh wow, the center of the galaxy must be very important, or the center of the universe must be very important. No. It's this planet, it's this environment, it's this earth. And it gets even more personal as we'll keep on reading. So we're at 29 minutes, and I just urge you to pray as we read together, as we study together. I urge you to spend some time. And I don't know if you believe any of this. I don't know if you don't. But what I will say, that you take the time to talk to God before we go through these lessons, after we go through them, that you take the time and address him, even if you don't believe in him. Address him. Ask him. Ask him about these things. It's worth it. It's worth taking the time and asking him. So thank you again for joining me. We're at 30 minutes right now. And I hope that we'll continue together next time.